What are your initial thoughts on everything? If I were just like,
It,
give me like a 1-2 sentence kind of like,
the Mac is back, baby. Of course, we all knew the Mac Mini was coming, but to see it, to see it, and to see the performance, and it's a pretty compelling update. I mean, there are some things about it that are different, I could say, about compared to last gen as far as ports and things like that.
yeah.
But overall, it's a pretty compelling update.
I think it's a fantastic package. And the redesign is cool and all, but at the end of the day, you're gonna stick that thing underneath the desk or underneath something to the side. So like after the first 30 seconds of holding it, you'll get used to it. You know what I mean? So it's a cool little redesign, and the fact that they can fit it in such a small package, which we knew they could, but I think it's a great package, and for the price, I think that's the biggest feature, the price point.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially like the entry level versions.
Yeah.
Because I believe the Mac Mini always started off at $599 though, right? Wasn't it always $599?
It was always $599, but
Yeah.
it was 8 gigs of RAM, and now we're at 16
true.
gigs of RAM across the entire Mac lineup as a baseline memory.
Yeah, like 8 gigabytes of RAM in 2023 was ridiculous. Like everyone knows that. And yeah, I know they need the extra RAM for Apple Intelligence, but that should have been a baseline from the jump. Like it's almost, unless you're doing just the very bare minimum, it's kind of just, it's just untenable. Like it just don't work.
Yeah.
To me. Like,
I mean, I agree. I mean, the number one thing I would tell people whenever they would buy a computer from Apple would be like, if you have the money, the one thing you should upgrade is the RAM.
for
You
sure.
you can get external storage. The Thunderbolt ports are fast enough for the transfer speeds. But if you have $200 to spare, throw it at the RAM and get 16.
Absolutely.
But now it comes
because
space.
yeah.
Which I
And
love.
it's like before, back in the day with the the old Mac Minis, you could upgrade the RAM. You could upgrade. I mean, they had SATA drives, and I remember upgrading my first Mac Mini, putting a new hard drive in, adding more memory. But they got rid of that. So I think at the very least, the baseline should be a usable amount of RAM. So anyway, that's my little rant with regard to memory. But it's good because now, like you said, all the MacBooks, all the Macs, desktop, laptop, all in one, doesn't matter. They all start with 16 gigabytes. Even the MacBook Air was updated.
Yeah.
Which, with 16 gigabytes of RAM, you would think that, all right, if they're going to have any machine that's going to start with 8, it would be that. But they even updated that, and that didn't even get a refresh. So,
which is crazy. Again, the feature point here is price to performance ratio is essentially what Apple's really leaning into, I think. And so right now the M3 Air, is that the one that's $999 right now? At 16 gigs? Like I currently use an M2 Air, and I think that one cost me, I put 16 gigs of RAM in it, but I think it cost me $13.99. So, you know what I mean? That's a $400 difference to get the same exact, or faster, obviously, because now they got the M3 in there. But so, again, price to performance ratio is the name of the game for Apple right now, I think.
Right. And actually, it's the M2 Air. They still sell the M2 Air, and that starts at $999. The 13-inch M3 it's $1,000 or $100 more rather. So that starts at, which is weird because it's like you can get an M2 Air for $999, or you can get an M3 Air for $1099.
It's interesting, man. So it's just $100 more.
Yeah,
Hey,
and
that's a price ladder, baby. They have to have that, you know? Just another $100, just another $100, just another $200, and then boom, you're at a $7,000 16-inch M4 Max MacBook Pro.
yeah. I didn't really get into the M3 era, or really M2 as much, but I didn't really get into the like I've been rocking this M1 Max since I won't say day one, but close to it.
Yeah.
And it is an admirable computer as far as longevity is concerned. It's funny because Ben Lovejoy, one of our writers at 9 to 5 Mac, always has really interesting opinions, and he talked about how Apple Silicon is almost too good.
I mean, do you remember the awe that people had, including ourselves, you know, going from Intel to M1? Insane, that update. And now the fact that like I'm kind of okay with Apple because people give Apple flack online for comparing their newest stuff to like way older stuff, or the way that they abstractly compare stuff with their graphs. But I kind of like how they compared it to the original M1, because once you start to think about it, the jump from Intel to M1 was insane. So now that we're 1.8 to 2.5x faster than that like feeling is kind of crazy when you think about it. So if you just take a step back and understand like what's going on, like yes, year over year, we're at a point where maybe it doesn't make sense to upgrade. Clearly, you're still rocking an M1, right? But if you do take a step back and see exactly how far they've come, it's a pretty big deal how fast these computers are getting.
Oh yeah. Like, and I think it's going to get to the point where like there's an obvious pattern, an upgrade pattern that you should kind of look at. Like, so are we skipping every 2 generations and then going to like, M1 to M4 and then M4 to what, M7 or whatever?
Yeah.
That kind of feels like that's where it's going. Obviously, I mean, anyone who has common sense or just financial literacy would not upgrade every single year, but we're just like anomalies, like we cover this stuff. So our upgrade patterns are a little bit different than a typical person. But if I like, clearly, I mean, I'm still, like you said, I'm running an M1 Max right now still. And I'm just like, I don't feel like I'm really missing out on that much, to be honest.
Like you're still going to get Apple Intelligence, or you still have it, right? You're on 15.1. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think you're missing anything. The form factor for the MacBook Pros are exactly the same. You got all the same ports. I guess you're missing on Thunderbolt 5, which we'll touch on a little bit if we want to get into the details later. But outside of that, I don't think you're missing much.
Yeah, and I have 32 gigabytes of RAM, which makes all the difference, right?
Yeah.
Because if this was an 8 gigabyte, well, they didn't make I don't even think you could get an 8 gigabyte M1 Max.
Not a Max. But like a MacBook Pro, you could, which is crazy.
Right. So if this thing had even 16 gigabytes, I'd probably be feeling the pinch. Well, I probably would have felt that like in year one, because I mean, that just makes so much of a difference to the performance and the perception of speed. Like, to me, there's two different things. Like, there's the CPU and the GPU. That is the speed, but then like having it's like having a Ferrari, but you're in one lane traffic basically, and there's like people blocking your lanes and they're getting in. You can't really get the full speed out of it. Whereas having a lot of RAM gives you a 5-lane wide highway to really, put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. So
that's a fantastic analogy. Let's write that one down.
So anyway,
So did you pick up a Mac Mini?
I did not order it yet, but I will. Yeah, I probably will. I've kind of debated it because I'm like, do I really need it? But I only have one Mac now, which is crazy. I've always had multiple Macs, but I have just this one computer for the last couple of years, and I feel like I need another because just for testing purposes and just doing videos and stuff like that, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like what your use case for it would be.
Yeah, so it'll be like a test mule or test machine. And that's where I'll be doing all my like benchmarks and stuff like that, and like tutorials where you need to reset your Mac a lot and stuff. There's just a lot of things that are hard to make when you only have one machine.
For sure.
So, yeah.
No, I agree. It's kind of like the situation how I use my iPhone to record everything, but sometimes I need to record the iPhone because I got to show something on the iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So anyway, that's that I probably will. What did you order? I'm curious.
I just got the baseline version. So my mentality was this M2 MacBook Air is basically a desktop computer for me anyway. So let me trade it in, because like whenever I'm mobile, I just grab my iPad, right? And my iPad is what I do most of my work on anyway. So kind of two birds with one stone. Like, A, let me replace it because my M2 Air is basically a desktop anyway, like I mentioned, and 2, for like videos and testing purposes and seeing like what it's actually like and reviewing it and stuff like that. So, and Apple, crazy enough, they're giving me basically the value of the base. I think they're giving me like $560 for this M2 Air.
That's pretty good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so you're basically getting it for $30.
Yeah.
Much.
And obviously I have all the peripherals I need already, so I don't need to go get keyboards or mice or monitors. So literally for $30, I'm getting a brand new computer.
So that's the only thing you purchased? Did you get anything else? Is that because I know normally you... Okay.
Yeah, I kept it simple.
No MacBook Pro, no iMac.
Nah. Okay. I wouldn't even know what to do with that stuff. You know me. You know, I don't need a MacBook Pro. It was cool and stuff, but I don't really need that. The iMac, it looks pretty, but I'm trying to figure out like what I would use that for. Like I said, I already have a great like BenQ monitor, even though the iMac looks really nice. There'd be like no real place for it in the house. We don't have like a home computer like some families have. So I'll kind of leave that up to everybody else. I do think it's a great package, but the Mac Mini is the way to go, I think. At least for me this year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And the port situation is interesting. Are we losing ports technically from the previous model? We're losing USB-A ports, right?
Losing 2 USB-A ports and a USB-C port. Well, no, we're not losing a USB-C port. We're actually gaining a USB-C port because there's the 2 ports on the front. But like on the rear, you're losing 1 USB-C port, I guess.
The only time I use the front ports is for that like temporary. Like I'll basically offload something from my iPad, put it in an SSD, plug that SSD in, and for some reason I like uploading videos from macOS versus iPadOS. I don't really know why. Just out of habit. So that's what I'll do. I'll plug it into my CalDigit and then upload it from there and then remove it. So I get, if it's something permanent, you're right. I would never have just like a charging cable poking out of there at all times or anything like that. But I do like the ease of access and how it's, they are different speeds from what I saw. So the front 2 are just USB-C, like USB 3 speeds, what the iPhone Pro Maxes have. And then the rear ones are Thunderbolt 4 on the baseline. And then I think you can get to Thunderbolt 5 with the M4 Pro.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great design. And like you said, you are losing 2 USB-A ports, but at this point in the game, like most people, most devices, I mean, I haven't bought a device in a long time that came with a USB-A.
The only thing that I can think of is I have the BenQ like Halo bar light thing that goes over your monitor. That one is a USB-A connection. So that's plugged into like my CalDigit hub. But I guess I could also just plug that in directly into my monitor actually. So it's not even a problem for me because my monitor has USB-A plugs. Huh. But outside of that, you're right. Everything else has been USB-C, which is awesome. We're finally there, baby.
Interesting. So here's another thing is that as we were talking about USB-C, Apple released new Magic hardware. So new Magic keyboard, new Magic mouse, new Magic trackpad. And the only real difference that we can tell thus far is that they come with the USB-C port instead of a Lightning port.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we knew that was coming, but it's kind of nice to finally have that.
Yeah. Are you going to pick any of those up?
I don't think so. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I am very particular about stuff like that. Just having like matching ports and like, for instance, I wanted to upgrade my AirPods to get the USB-C port. That was my main like motivation.
Yeah.
And it's just easier to use USB-C. And I do get frustrated. I have to have a Lightning like cable. Actually, I have it plugged in right now as we're talking because my keyboard was about to die before we started this. But and long story short, no, I will not be spending
$200,
$400 or whatever it costs to get all 3 of those updated.
True.
Because it's just like they still work, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah, like I still have I have a Magic keyboard and trackpad that are just like in a box, like the Lightning versions that I just don't use ever. I don't even know why. I think I just prefer to have like the Satechi one that I've been using for years. And I thought about getting the new one because, like you said, it is USB-C and it has Touch ID built in.
Touch ID, yeah.
But even then, like, nah, it wasn't $200 for the keyboard. I couldn't justify it when I have like 3 really nice keyboards already.
Oh, so you would get you would go all out with the keyboard, like getting the full, like with the number pad and all that, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Did they have the smaller option with the USB-C also?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd probably go with that one then. I was just kind of looking. I looked really quickly and I saw $199 and I was like, no thanks.
Yeah, I think that was for the, if I'm not mistaken,
the numpad version.
Yeah, I think that was for the. Now you got me wondering.
Yeah, let's see.
What that was.
Because I mean, it is like you said, like having unified, like going USB-C, all things. Big fan of. That's what we've been wanting. Let's see. I guess this one's $199 is for the number pad version. Where is a non-number pad version though?
It's not like a super cheap option, but if the nice thing is, I guess here's the nice thing about it is that if we ever do purchase one again, or you ever do get a new one, it's going to come with USB-C. So that's kind of how I look at it. Like eventually, probably sometime down the line, I will get a new one of these. and it's going to be nice that I don't have to worry about lightning anymore. So that's kind of my perspective.
For sure. I'm like looking. I don't see a. Where is the? Okay, here we go. Found it. So it's $149 for the small one with Touch ID, but they also released a USB-C version non-Touch ID.
Right. Yeah.
For $99.
They actually released 3 different keyboards.
Yeah.
With USB-C. So the number pad version, the non-Touch ID version, and the the regular Touch ID version. Which to me, I know you use an Apple Watch to unlock and stuff like that, but Touch ID is pretty handy. I have to admit. Like,
no, for sure.
Because it's like your fingers are right there. You don't have to reach over and double press your watch or anything like that. So,
in classic Apple, I didn't realize that there's an upcharge for the black version, like an extra $20. So the white USB-C with Touch ID, the big one is $179. The black one is $199.
Yeah.
Did anything stand out to you on anything else from the Mac Mini side?
For the Mac Mini side, just the performance, man. Like, I mean, it is. First of all, I love the fact that Apple like advertised all of these little like use cases on their marketing material. So they have like a Mac Mini with a Keychron keyboard, or with next to an iPad, or they have a Logitech MX Master, or they have it next to a PlayStation 5 controller. Like, it's just all these different use case scenarios, and really kind of just showing the flexibility of the Mini. So I thought that was kind of cool.
No, for sure. And I don't think I've ever seen Apple have such like these hero images with other brands. Have you ever seen that before?
Very rarely. I've seen it before, but it's just like this was like clearly intentional. Like, yeah. They just want to show the diversity of this machine. It really just kind of shows how it appeals to everybody. Like, it's like the everyman's Mac. It's a great starter Mac if you're just getting started with Mac OS, or you're interested in Apple. Be careful. Be careful, because it's like a gateway.
That's so true. The slippery slope once you get in. And turn on that ecosystem button. Turn on your iCloud. It's game over.
Yeah. So that was the thing that stood out. Also, obviously, like we said, the performance, the benchmarks. This is the fastest. The M4 Pro Mac Mini is the fastest Mac desktop, even eclipsing the M2 Ultra Mac Studio in performance, which is insane. Wild.
Yeah, some people were a little. I got some comments when I did a recap of it. It's like, so my like 6,000 Mac Studio that I bought like 2 years ago, my $6,000 one is obsolete now, or what? I can get the same thing for $600. I was like, not quite $600, but yeah, for like
you still have an SD card slot.
You still got an SD card slot.
Well, that is painful. I mean, that is. I won't say that's a 1-to-1 situation, but
it's like a 98 to 1%.
Yeah,
like something like that.
I mean, it's pretty true. Like, I won't say it's obsolete. Obviously, it's only obsolete if it's obsolete in your mind, right? Because if it still works, it's not obsolete. But it's gotta hurt. It's gotta hurt. Like, because you're getting a serious like performance. I mean, the M2 Ultra. Like, how much is that? Like, it's because they still sell it. Obviously,
I couldn't tell you.
Apple.com.
I mean,
Mac.
It's true. You could probably get like 95% of the way there to the Mac Studio, which then starts to get you like, it gets me thinking of like what the Mac Studio with like an M4 Ultra Mac Studio is going to be like,
Oh, beastly, man. This is like the really big jump from M1 to this. So it starts at $4,000.
Still,
granted, you're getting 64 gig. So all right, let's just do a quick, and I won't take a lot of time here, but I want to do a quick configuration and configure a Mac Mini that with similar specs to the base model M2 Ultra, and just to see how they compare. So I'm going to do that real quick. Pre-order.
I'm sure it's going to get real close. I bet you, I'm going to throw some guesses out there. So the Mac Studio comes base with what, 64 gigs of RAM, you said? And 1 terabyte of storage? 512?
You're giving Apple too much credit, aren't you?
4 Gs?
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. 1 terabyte. Wow.
I was gonna say, if you give me less than 1 terabyte for $4,000, we're gonna have issues.
So all right. So I have it configured.
Okay.
So, hey, I could even throw in the
Final Cut Pro in there too. Why not? $300.
Of course, somebody's mowing their lawn right now.
So I don't hear anything.
So all right. So I configured it with the highest like chip that you could get in the Mac Mini, right?
Okay.
$2,500 with 64 gigabytes of storage, 1 terabyte SSD. Oh man, that's gotta hurt. So you're basically paying almost double for now. Granted, it's not exactly the same because you are getting an SD card slot. Oh man, that hurts.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, synthetic benchmarks are synthetic benchmarks. So you don't really have a true comparison of the speed differences, especially on a case by case, application by application sort of scenario. But just looking from a wide lens, it's pretty. Yeah, I'd be hurt if I had this studio. Not only that, it takes up a whole lot more space.
Yeah. It looks like a mini. Again, it's a Mac Mini. It looks like a mini version of the Mac Studio minus the SD card slot. You know?
Pretty much. Mm-hmm. Like they made a Mac Studio Mini. Yeah.
Which I'm cool with. But yeah, you're right. $2,500 to get that kind of power. It goes back to the whole price performance ratio. I think that's what's going to be Apple's superpower moving forward, I think, for a long time. Because people are saying, they're stagnant, they're not being innovative enough. It's just like these aren't flashy, but when you really start to hone in on it, it's incredible what they're doing.
Yeah, man. And like even just looking at the port offerings, like,
can we talk about the video output of the Mac Mini? It supports an 8K display. An 8K 60, 8K 30, regardless, an 8K display. That's crazy.
Yeah, so this is the Mac Mini, the previous Mac Mini did too.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I thought that was new to this Mac Mini.
Because I remember getting an 8K display just to test
you did. How much is an 8K display?
I don't know how much it was, but yeah, I had an 8K display for a little bit just to test it out, and yeah, it works. Okay.
All right, send it right back.
Yeah. So yeah, it's looking at the display configuration. So this can support up to 3 displays, 2 displays with up to 6K resolution, which is crazy. But the M4 Pro, what's even nuts about that, it supports 3 Pro Display XDRs at the same time. It's just crazy.
So $15,000 worth of displays in a $2,500 computer.
Yeah. I mean, it's an impressive thing. I mean, and then you're getting Thunderbolt 5, so that makes it so that it's the Studio seems like one of the worst buys right now. The M2 Ultra Mac Studio, do not buy that thing right now because it literally is inferior in almost every way outside of the fact that it has USB-A ports and the SD card slot. And outside of the fact that you can configure it a little bit higher as far as memory and stuff. But
yeah. It's kind of like when the, what was the Mac Pro? You could spend, because that was Intel based. I remember people were buying $50,000 versions of that thing. And then the Mac Studio came along, and it's kind of the same conversation, but, that for $6,000, you can get a $50,000 equivalent or something like that with the Mac Studio.
To that point, I'm glad you mentioned that because it's the same thing with the Mac Pro. It's the same scenario. You can get a Mac Pro for $7,000 starting, right?
And do they still sell the Mac Pro?
Yeah.
And so why would they even do that?
But it's the Apple Silicon version, right?
Yeah, true.
M2 Ultra. So the reason they do it is because of the expandability. Some people need to put cards for videos or for audio. But that's the worst buy. The Mac Pro entry level model, $7,000, right?
Crazy.
And it's probably going to be, I don't think there's a probably about it. I think the Mac Mini M4 Pro will handily beat that for just a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
So again, this is not exactly apples to apples. There's different things to consider there.
No pun intended.
And we're looking at synthetic benchmarks, so keep that in mind. But just from a wide lens, this looks like the new worst buy. It was already the worst buy in my opinion, but this definitely is up there now. Crazy times.
The Mac Mini, baby. Shout out to Apple. And then one last thing that I do want to mention is the power consumption, because this is it only consumes 7.5 watts of power, which is kind of insane. which kind of allows you to hopefully build one of those like mobile things that we're talking about, like getting an iPad or some sort of portable display with an external battery. You plug it in, you got a mobile Mac wherever you want, like a little mobile PC. Yes, I know that's called a laptop most of the time, but,
I was gonna say
but still cool though.
Yeah, I was talking to you in Slack about that, and I started thinking to myself, like, there's laptops for that.
Yeah. No, but this is way cooler. If you make it way tougher to do and a little bit more expensive than a laptop, it sounds cool.
So here's the thing, though, is one, like you mentioned that, good point, the wattage. So what will be, like, I just don't know how much throttling will be involved here.
Yeah.
If any. Maybe it's designed, I mean, it's basically just a giant heat sink.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's designed, obviously they updated the airflow and all the internals to make that even better. So it'd be interesting just to see how much sustained performance you can get out of one of these things. But it looks pretty compelling.
Yeah. No, agreed. And the power button situation, I thought that was hilarious.
I almost feel like they're just trolling.
You literally, dude, I thought the same thing. I bet you the engineers in the back were like, you know what we should do? We should put it underneath.
That's hilarious, dude. I think they just do that for engagement. Like, I mean, honestly, it's not a bad thing that people are talking about this. There are people like bashing it because it keeps their name in their mouth, and they're like, now people know more about the Mac Mini. Maybe someone wouldn't even have known that it launched, but they see this thing on Reddit or whatever. It's hilarious. But I feel like that could have possibly been the scenario there.
Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, you thought the Magic Mouse was bad? Just wait.
Yeah, that's funny. But it's like, how often do you need that power button? It's very rare.
Yeah.
So,
I never turn off my laptop or my iPad.
Me neither.
It's very rare. Obviously, I do it every now and then, but yeah.
So that's the Mac Mini, the world's Apple's fastest desktop computer.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, like, one of the things about the Mac Mini that both it and the MacBook Pro got was Thunderbolt 5.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of confusion about USB-C, Thunderbolt, all that, and rightfully so, because it is a nomenclature mess. Like, there's just so many naming conventions, so many specs. How can even us who are knee deep in this stuff have trouble keeping up with what's going on with all of the different specs?
And then you have the cables. USB. You have like cables that are only meant to pass like 5 watts of charging that are like 99 cents, and then you can spend $150 on a long Thunderbolt now 5 cable. And I try to keep, like, I'm looking at my box full of just USB-C cables, and they're like pretty much all different. They all physically look the same, but some are better for power, some are for data, some aren't. Some, I have my Thunderbolt ones separated because if not, I'll just confuse them with the other ones. So even though, yes, we now have a universal physical plug, you could argue that it's more complicated now.
Yeah, I mean, you could easily, because like you said, I have the same scenario. Like, there's times, like, for instance, when I'm connecting my camera to my Mac just for this podcast, sometimes I'll connect it with a USB-C cable, and it's like, it downgrades to 720p because it says the cable's not fast enough. I'm like, but why? Like, there's no, like, I use this cable for other things and it's perfectly fine. Then I put a Thunderbolt cable there and it connects perfectly fine and it gives me full 1080p. So it's just one of those things that I feel like could be better. And I think Thunderbolt 5 does help with this. Like, because if you get a Thunderbolt 5 cable, you pretty much, from what I understand, can, like, it's fully backwards compatible. So it should work with every device, I would think. But then there's some situations where Thunderbolt cables don't work with, like, they just need a regular USB cable, which is confusing. But anyway, so Thunderbolt 5 is basically double the speed. That's kind of its biggest claim to fame, is double the speed.
I thought it was triple the speed.
Well,
talk to me.
It can be a little, it's kind of weird. All right, so Thunderbolt 5 doubles the minimum bandwidth requirements from 40 gigabits per second to 80 gigabits per second. And it supports transfer speeds, whereas Thunderbolt 4 had transfer speeds up to 40 gigabits per second. Thunderbolt 5 can do transfer speeds up to 120 gigabits per second, but they call it adaptive bandwidth boost. So detects high volume video traffic, and then it will automatically basically like toggle over into this bandwidth boost mode and give you 120 gigabits per second for the upstream to provide the video, and then relegate the downstream from 80 to 40, so that you're getting, you're still getting two-way bandwidth, but more of that bandwidth is dedicated to video when there's demand, and it's able to detect that automatically, supposedly. So that's cool. So these cables are UHBR20 cables, which basically means 4 lanes for a total of 80 gigabits per second. So 20 gigabits per lane, I believe.
I thought they were going to be way more. I thought they were going to be way more expensive too. I mean, they're expensive for a cable. Don't get me wrong. But $70 gets you one from Apple for a 1 meter one, kind of short. But yeah, I'm looking at you're right, the 120 versus the 80 gigabits per second. And again, it's not just the data speeds; it supports up to 240 watts of power, so you can really charge up, which is crazy. Daisy chain up to 6 different Thunderbolts.
And these are passive cables, so they're not active cables where you have extra hardware in the cable to maintain these speeds over long distances. There's technology that goes way over my head. It's called pulse amplitude modulation.
Whoa.
And you have multiple levels of that. So there's pulse amplitude modulation 2, there's pulse amplitude modulation 4, which is, and then they also have pulse amplitude modulation 3, which these cables support, and basically making it so that you can get the signal through higher speeds without degradation to the signal. So
I'm learning something new today.
That's my best explanation of it. It's good. Like I said, it goes way over my head. But these are definitely better cables, and Apple's cables are really, really well done. They're really well designed. There's more to it than just the cable. There's a lot going on inside those cables, inside the connectors even. And I purchased 2, it's crazy, but I did purchase 2 of the 3-meter Thunderbolt 4 cables that Apple sells.
That's definitely over 100, right? For sure.
It's like 160.
Yeesh.
But I purchased 2 of those because like they were really the only option to get a really long cable, unless you go fiber optic. But it was kind of like the only option to get a 3-meter cable, which I needed for something I was working on. And but they're good cables, man. They're really good cables. So
whenever I do go Thunderbolt, I gravitate towards Apple because you can get some from Amazon for probably half the price, but you don't really know what you're getting at that point. At least with Apple, you get what you're paying for, and they're beautiful cables, and they work as intended. So if you need a long one, then you got $160. Go for it. Although right now Thunderbolt 5 is only 1 meter. They don't have the 3-meter one yet. Yeah,
there's no 3-meter yet. That'll probably cost a pretty penny. But these support video, like just without any sort of compression. I believe 4K to 40 hertz, and then 8K up to like 85 hertz. But then when you introduce display stream compression, I think 1.2A, then you can get into some really high resolutions and high refresh rates without any really noticeable loss in quality. So that's where the 8K 120 will come in. So these are capable of 8K 120.
That's wild.
Which Apple actually sort of advertised that the M4 would be compatible with. When they first launched the iMac, I think on their website, in the tech specs, it says compatible with the 8K 120 display, but they removed that. So I don't know if they're going to wait until the M4 Ultra and save it for that, or if it's something they'll be able to enable later. I'm not sure, but
can you get an 8K
clearly
120 monitor?
I've never seen one. No, I don't even think they make TVs that are 8K 120, to my knowledge, but I could be wrong.
No, I mean, I'm not finding one. An 8K monitor at 30 hertz is about $4,000 from Dell. That's crazy.
Yeah,
but hey,
why?
It can support it though.
Yeah, it can. Yep. So anyway, that's my
your tech lesson for us today.
Very, very take it with a grain of salt tech lesson for today. Let's go ahead and finish it up with MacBook Pro, and we talked about iMac. iMac got a nano texture display. It gets another USB-C port. I think that's
That's pretty much it. New colors? Did we get new colors? I think so.
New colors, yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Oh, and a center stage camera, right? That's a new thing.
It is a new thing for the iMac.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll be easier to video chat.
But so here's the thing, like Apple's marketing, they market this not as a FaceTime HD camera anymore. They market it as a center stage camera, which is weird, right? Because even the previous MacBook Pros, they were marketed as a FaceTime HD. So this is like it's upgraded camera, 12 megapixel center stage camera with support for desk view, 1080p HD video recording, and then advanced image signal processor with computational video. So
you saw that video that was posted on the Slack? I think the guy's name is like Andy To. He makes like cinematic stuff and usually gets invited to Apple stuff. And he made a quick little 45-second video he used the MacBook Pro camera. You know, it was kind of crazy. I mean, it's impressive. Like you can tell that obviously it wasn't a great camera, but it's impressive you're able to put something together like that, you know? So if you really wanted to, you could.
Yeah, Apple says it delivers enhanced quality in difficult lighting situations. So a lot of that computational stuff comes into play there. So it'll be nice. I mean, it's always nice to get a better webcam.
For sure.
But that also comes to the MacBook Pro. So let's talk about MacBook Pro.
Let's do it. What do we get? So we also get the nano texture display option for MacBook Pro. That's new. We got into the screen got a little bit brighter. So the default brightness setting can go up to 1,000 nits and still up to the 1,600 nit brightness for HDR, which is impressive for a laptop.
It was only HDR content. It was 1,000. Is that right? So yeah. The way they say that is kind of confusing, but it says now you can show. So basically, all your content can now get super bright, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like,
which is awesome.
So if you're in the sun,
because these things can get glary, you know, for sure.
Exactly.
In sunlight,
unless
you get a nano texture. Yeah. Then that light just bounces right off.
Yeah.
And then we have so battery life. I mean, ever since we moved over to the M series chips, battery life has been impressive for pretty much all Apple hardware, from the iPad to the MacBooks. But now they're rating it at 24 hours of battery life, which is impressive. And obviously we can't test it yet, but I think you could get to the 24 hours. Like this MacBook Air lasts me a very long time if I don't charge it. You know, and standby mode is unreal on Macs. You can leave it in a month later, you can come back and it's still got some charge.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's crazy because like you'll buy a Mac and you know it's been in the warehouse forever, right? And then you get it home and it's like 50%.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool.
Exactly. So battery life is a nice little added bonus. Now, it remains yet to be seen if it's going to be like 24 hours of like video editing in 8K 120, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
which I doubt,
like
but
10 minutes.
Let's see. Maybe it's a Safari video test. You know, watching just Safari videos over and over again for 24 hours.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we get the same thing that the Mac Mini got. So the M4 Pro, we did get the M4 Max, and then also the Thunderbolt 5 came over to the MacBook Pros.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, that's a pretty compelling lineup, like a pretty compelling Mac lineup. Outside of the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro, like pretty much all the offerings are worthy of consideration depending on your use case. It's nice.
No, I agree. And there's like something for everybody too. Like depending on where you're coming from. Obviously, if you have an M3 machine, probably not the best decision unless you really want to. But if you're coming from anywhere else, like they're going to be welcome updates depending on what your use cases are, like you said, and how far you push these things. And there's an option for everybody at every price point, literally all the way down to from $599 to almost $7,500.
Or if you're in school like Fernando.
Hey, if I shaved this mustache, I would look even younger. I could probably pull it off.
So all right, so just to round it off, what is your most compelling? So Apple's done for the year, right?
Yeah,
they should be done for the year,
at least hardware wise.
No hardware. What would you say is the most compelling product they've released this year?
This year, that's public facing
or software.
Yeah, that's public facing. Because I do think 18.2 is sick. We'll get into that maybe next episode, but I think 18.2 with visual intelligence is cool. But the most compelling one, I think this Mac Mini, man. And it goes back down to the price performance ratio. I guess Vision Pro came out this year, but I don't know. I'm putting that in the back burner. That alone is very impressive in terms of just raw, like, wow factor and what it can do. But not a lot of people have it, clearly. So I think the most accessible one, the one that has the best price performance ratio, the one that got a visual change, and the one that's probably the most capable for the most amount of people is going to be the Mac Mini.
Hard to disagree there.
Yeah.
Vision Pro is clearly the most impressive technical. I was using it yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
I use it actually pretty regularly now. I just kind of use it for entertainment now. And if you kind of think of it just as the best TV you can buy, it's pretty cool. But like you said, the Mac Mini is by far, pound for pound, the most compelling update we've received this year.
No, for sure. I mean, you could argue a little bit. I guess now the iPhone 16 Pro lineup, it's a great iPhone in a silo, but year to year, it wasn't that big of a difference. So yeah, I'm gonna crown the Mac Mini as the new best thing Apple has made, at least hardware wise. Sure. I think there's some cool little software features, like being able to see your iPhone now with 15.1 on your desktop, or some of the writing tools are cool. But again, I think 18.2 is gonna wow a lot of people. I've been using it pretty heavily on my iPhone, even from just sheer, like creating stuff from scratch now, because of the ChatGPT integration, and it works, man. It works well.
Really? I haven't even, outside of the little test I did for the video, I don't even think I talked to ChatGPT once.
Yeah. like I'm working on
what are you using it for? Like,
mostly just like idea creation stuff, or like helping me with like for, what's it called? A great example that I would use ChatGPT for, right? Something happened with like a video that was sponsored, and I had like the chapters in line, and I had to add like a 35-second piece in front of it. So I'd grab my timestamps, through it. That's what I would do. I'd grab my timestamps, throw into ChatGPT, and like add 35 seconds to each of these timestamps, and then give me the same thing back. Instead of doing that, I just went into my Notes app and said the same thing. And now it's across all of my devices. So it's like little things like that, right?
You're smart.
Instead of like trying to mentally add every 35 seconds to every timestamp or something like that. Yeah. And then same with, then I was like, you know what? Now take these timestamps and help me with a video title. And it helped me with a video title, right? So it's like things like that are now built in natively, which are very helpful. And then visual intelligence, I have a whole video that's coming out, kind of trying to push it to the limit a little bit to see exactly what it can do. And it works well. You take a picture of a storefront, it'll tell you the time. It'll integrate with Apple Maps. You can, if you take a picture of like a restaurant, it'll give like an order button, so you can like order directly from the restaurant through visual intelligence. So things like that. Just again, Apple's whole thing was like make your life easier, make it efficient, and you don't have to think about it. And I'm getting to the point now where like the things that I sometimes would use ChatGPT for, I just like stay inside of Apple's garden for it.
Look at Fernando, man, so inspirational.
Trying. Just using the tools around me,
man. That's impressive. I'm gonna have to start looking into that for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there's like things that I could use in my workflow that would help. That ChatGPT would help for sure. So very cool. Well, let's talk about that next week.
Yeah, let's do that next week.
We'll also talk about how we like our new Macs. So
yeah, right. Because
that'd be cool.
When do they show up? November 8th. Hopefully.
Oh yeah, we probably won't talk about it.
Yeah, maybe I'll unbox. Maybe I'll hold it. I'll be holding it like this, depending on what time it shows up.
Yeah, exactly.